Brilliant. Well, good morning, everyone. I can see we've already had a lot of people join us. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to share my screen and give you a poll to do while people are joining. So let me share that screen. And I'm going to switch over. So the poll, you should be able to see it on screen. It uses a piece of software called Slido. You can either go to slido.com and then type in that number, which is 2330463. Or if you'd rather do it on your phone, there is a QR code. So either of those. So you can either join at slido.com, and then type in 2330463 or via the QR code. What I'll do is I will open the first poll so you see something when you get on your screen, otherwise you just get Slido. So let me start the poll. So these are just to find out a little bit about you all just before we start today's session. So if you can just join at Slido, and then you're already all doing it. I can see we're a proficient bunch, which is brilliant. And just start to do that. Anyone who's just joined us, we're just on slido.com, just doing a few polls before we start the session. You'll find out in my slides that these were going to be slightly later on, but I just thought we'd do them now to give people a chance to join. Because it's always the way, isn't it? You're trying to join something and you've got a meeting just before and you're running in between. Brilliant. So the first question is, where is your charity on its AI journey? And the answers are coming in on that one. Whenever I say we've got a strong winner, something always shifts at that moment. But it looks like we're mainly at what we'd call that kind of dabbling stage, where we've got individuals using AI, but it's not coordinated. And then we're seeing some growth across, we're encouraging use with some guidance from leadership. So that sort of experimentation stage for charities go through. We have a policy in place, got nearly, I could say 17%, so nearly 20%, so about 1 in 5. There was a big growth last year and it's happening a lot this year, is a lot of people are starting to look at that policy side of things. And then currently we haven't started yet and we're actively rolling AI out across all teams. If you've just joined us, we are just on slido.com, just doing a few polls while people join. You can join at slido.com and then you type in 2330463, or if you'd rather do it on your phone, there is a QR code. Slido, if you've never used it before, is very straightforward. You don't need to log in. It is literally just a way for polls. Okay, brilliant. Well, let's go on to our next one. So what we've learned from Where is Your Charity on its AI journey is that we're mainly at that kind of informal use, so for individuals using it, or leadership have kind of started to give it a little bit more emphasis and are encouraging people to have a go with it. So I'm going to flip over to the next poll. If you've just joined us, you should be able to join at any stage. So our next one is, which AI tools does your charity allow you to use? Now, if it's individuals, it might be it's just any AI tool, absolutely fine. If it's specific tools, let's see. Today we're talking Copilot, so I just thought it would be an interesting thing to find out at the start of the session. So as I was expecting, we're seeing a lot of Copilot, which would make sense with today's webinar theme. And then what have we got further down the list? Oh, they're all moving very quickly. I'm going to give you all a chance to answer rather than keep talking. If you have just joined us, we're just over at slido.com, just doing a couple of polls while we give people a chance to join. If you want to join in, just go to slido.com and type in 2330463, or you can use the QR code on your phone. Apologies to the people who've already heard me say that multiple times. Okay, great. Well, what have we got So which AI tools does your charity allow you to use? So the vast majority of you, it's Copilot. That would make sense with today's webinar, although that does probably mirror what's going on more widely out there. We've then got coming up joint second, we've got any AI tools, so you've got no restrictions, or we've got ChatGPT. ChatGPT was the first of the AI tools. It had that big burst of kind of common usage. We've got some for Gemini. Gemini is Google's AI tool. If you are a Google Workspace user, Gemini is great because it's embedded across it. And a little bit for Claude. Claude is by a company called Anthropic, and is gaining popularity, but it's that challenge of being a standalone tool. And we have got a few of you where no AI tools are formally allowed, so I guess you are here today to find out how you can get started safely. So a great place to start. And then our last poll, and then we will make a start. So what's the main thing holding your organisation back from using AI more? Answers coming in there. I always wish I could see what the others were, but there's no easy way of doing it on these online polls. So top, very strong top on this is concerns about risks, and that's a lot about what we're going to talk about today. Is particularly we're going to talk data and accuracy rather than safeguarding, but that is another important area to consider. And some bits about lack of training or confidence and not sure how it applies to our work. That's what we very commonly see out there across both the business and the charity sector. And then others, 9%, always interested what those are. If you'd like to share in the chat, feel free. And then not enough time. I'm actually pleased to see that's only 6%, because for a lot of people we meet, that is the big challenge. Brilliant. Well, thank you for that. That just helps me as we go through today's session. So welcome to our webinar today with Qlic IT on how charities can safely adopt M365 Copilot Chat. If you're thinking, what is Copilot Chat? Is that Copilot? I will explain the distinction in just a minute for you. Firstly, just to introduce myself, here are some pictures of me created with Copilot. I think one is a lot more flattering than the other. My name's Caroline Broadway. I run a company called Dandelion Applied AI, where we work with businesses and charities to help them use everyday AI tools. I spend the majority of my time helping with tools like Copilot, ChatGPT, and it's really about safe and ethical adoption. My background is I have worked in the charity sector before I started running this organisation. I was a director of fundraising and marketing in a charity. And I think, like all charities, we were very busy and spent a lot of time firefighting and trying to get on top of things. It was just about that time post-COVID where we were all trying to rebuild income. And what I saw is that these AI tools that were just coming in could have made a real difference to my team and helping them do things kind of quicker, which would have given us more capacity to focus on some of the things we would have liked to have spent more time on. So what we are going to talk about today is our 3-point framework, which is all about starting to use Microsoft 365 Copilot Chat safely and effectively. It's one of those tools that frankly has appeared just about everywhere across the Microsoft suite, but actually using AI at all needs a little bit of thought just to make sure we've considered the risks and make sure we are using it safely. So it's fantastic to see so many of you here today. The 3 points we're going to look at, the first one, some of you I can see already were here from the polls, is secure leadership buy-in and define meaningful purpose. What we don't want is AI use for the sake of AI. What we want to do is look at how it can be used within our charity context and how it actually supports the purpose of our charity and will help with the mission, and it is used in line with our values as well. And second, the big area is about reducing risks, strengthening governance, and embedding ethical AI. I know this is very key for all charity organisations, and we'll just talk you through some of the bigger risks of AI use, and then what a governance framework looks like, and then the pillars of AI to consider. And then our third area is we're just going to look at upskilling, motivating, and supporting your staff. Successful, safe, and effective AI use is about people, not actually about the technology. It's about people knowing how to use it and how to use it safely. So this area is particularly key. What we need to think about is how we can encourage people to use it in a productive way that links back to our purpose and being more productive on those side of things. And so, in case you were wondering, what is M365 Copilot Chat, and is that different from Copilot? Well, Microsoft did not help us out here. They have many products with very similar names. So you basically have two tiers of the business version of Copilot. I will show you a picture later on, but it's really important we are using the work version of Copilot. So it'll be M365 Copilot. It comes with obviously different safety and protection than the consumer version that you might want to use at home. There are two tiers. There's a premium tier, which we're not talking about today. That premium tier has more access than the basic version, and it can actually see all the files on your work systems. So it has access to the same files that you do, and it uses those files to answer questions. What we're actually going to focus on today is Copilot Chat. This is what they call their basic version. This is what is available and included if you pay for a Work M365 Office subscription. And you are still able to work with your files, but you'll need to be able to upload those as an attachment. And it can view what you're looking at when you use it in things like Word, Excel, or even Outlook nowadays. So they call that kind of grounding. So again, you can chat to it about what you're looking at. And increasingly, it's able actually to help you in those documents as well. So let's get started with the first of our 3 points. And this can a little bit with Copilot be retrofitting it because it is already rolled out. But when we're looking at using AI, it is important to start here because actually to use it well, it will need people to take time out for training or to take time out to look at how they can use it better within their different tasks. And it's important that we ground all of that in helping us deliver our charity's purpose. So I mentioned people are key when it comes to AI, particularly as we're talking about Copilot Chat. So we actually have the tool in place. And there are different groups of people that we need to think about. First is securing senior support. Senior support actually is one of the things that really makes a difference in terms of successful AI adoption. It's one of those things that actually does need that level of discussion, and that senior support at kind of leadership team level, depending on your charity structure, you may also want to involve your trustees. We certainly increasingly see trustees and others come along to training. And that senior team working with the wider team are a great place to start about thinking about how AI links back to your charity purpose. But then as well as senior support, we need to create AI champions across the organisation. And this is really important. We've got a group of you here who I'm sure will have colleagues back into your charities. And having people within the organisation who understand a bit more about these AI tools, maybe do a little bit more experimentation, and are able to show others how they can actually use them in ways that will support the charity's purpose and will link with their workflow is really key. So when you think about safe and effective AI adoption, people are an absolutely essential element of that. And as I've mentioned, what we need to do is link it back to purpose and start with a clear vision. So how does using AI fit with your charity's purpose? Are you wanting to free up time from admin to allow your team to spend more time with your service users or more time doing other things? Or actually, is your team just so busy that you want to free them up so they can actually get home away from work at a reasonable time and improve their well-being? We hear this quite a lot when we're talking to the charity sector, that I know from my time working within the charity sector that it is busy jobs and people are working very hard, usually with quite little to do what they need to do. So if a tool can give you back a little bit of time every day and do some of your admin for you, that actually is a real advantage. Is it about improving quality? I mentioned I started this, and before that I was looking after marketing and fundraising. Well, one of the things this would have really helped my fundraising team do is to help write fast drafts of bid using other drafts that we'd written and then editing them and making them specific to the audience. It's really important whenever we use Copilot that we always edit it and check it and make it relevant to us and our organisation, and that it reflects our stories and our personality. And so just at leadership team level and as a whole charity, having that discussion about why you want to use AI and what you hope to accomplish with it starts to frame everything you're going to then do with it, because it gives you a way of looking at how it can actually help you. Now, these purpose statements don't need to be complicated. They can be quite straightforward. So it can be as simple, here's one up here: AI tools are becoming more common in the charity sector. We want to take the time to explore how we can use them to assist with our work, always with a human in the loop. We want to develop the team with the skills and knowledge to use AI ethically and effectively so we can all save time to focus on our mission. These statements then usually go into things like policy and get used when we talk about AI within the organisation. So useful for everyone to have that shared focus, and great obviously to do that together so that everyone buys into this. But there may be, and there probably is, some people on your organisation who are going to need to go on a little bit of a journey to see how Copilot can benefit them. So we've set our foundations in place and we've thought about what the purpose is, about why we want to use AI. We've got the senior team involved, even if it's just to make sure they're happy and aware of the risks. And then we've briefed up to trustees if we need to. It will depend on your governance and your organisational structure. And hopefully we've also got together some AI champions from across our different teams within the organisation who will be those advocates for AI and be those experimenters and find good ways of using it to help others. So our next part of our plan is all about thinking about the risks of AI use from the poll. We know this is everyone's top concern, how we can strengthen governance around that, and then importantly, how we can embed ethical AI use. So let's start by thinking about the biggest risks. And today we are going to focus on two key risks. This is not an exhaustive list. There are a range of those, but these are two that are particularly prevalent. First is around data privacy and security. So knowing where your data goes, is your data safe, and making sure that you're using appropriate tools for the type of data you're working with. So important, as I know many of your charities will be working with vulnerable people and hold a lot of personal and sensitive data. And then the other side is the reputational risk. Now, the examples I will give you will be from the commercial sector, because those are the ones that hit the headline. But we all know how important trust is in charities and how we all want to ensure that the people we work with, our funders, our supporters, our stakeholders, all feel they can trust what we do. So let's start by looking at data privacy and security. A key part of this is tool selection, and obviously we're looking at M365 Copilot Chat today. But when we're working with AI, and I know we had a few of you able to use any tool, what we need to think about is, where is our data going? And by data, I mean any information we're putting into that AI tool. And is it secure? And is it being used to train these AI tools? And I've just put up two common examples. Now, data privacy and security varies by account type. So I've compared two options which don't require additional funding, but there are versions of ChatGPT, our business accounts, where this would look different. So again, it's making sure that you have the right account type for what you're doing. So this is why many organisations are currently opting to use M365 Copilot Chat as their default AI tool, because it's part of a business software package. So it comes with a lot of business software benefits built into it. So M365 Copilot Chat, the basic version, is a business account. Microsoft state that they will not use the data for training. Now, in case you're wondering what using the data for training means, so AI like ChatGPT or M365 Copilot Chat is powered by something called a large language model. And large language models are trained on vast data sets. They spot patterns within those data sets, and they use what they learn from spotting those patterns to generate new content. The type of AI we're talking about is called generative AI, because it's about generating new content from what they've learned from their training set. So the free version of ChatGPT, you can turn this off, uses what you put into it to help train the next version of the AI model. Whereas M36 Copilot Chat has this off for you. Now, this is important because obviously, hopefully we're not sharing anything sensitive or confidential into an AI model, but we just need to be aware that this is then being used in that way. In terms of security, so this is how your data is looked after. Again, you've got that difference between basic security and enterprise. And then I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, but things like where your data is hosted and GDPR compliance. Now, these are important areas. If you are dealing with sensitive data, make sure you have a discussion with your data protection lead about these issues and just make sure that they are happy, that it complies with your own data protection policy. But again, the advantage of Copilot Chat is as standard your data. And by data, I mean anything that goes into the AI tools, so that's your prompts, your documents, is within your tenant. That's the bit of the cloud that Microsoft allocate to you. And one of the things I see very commonly when I'm out there training in different organisations is that, frankly, quite reasonably, people have accidentally downloaded the consumer version of Microsoft Copilot rather than the business version of Microsoft Copilot. And we absolutely want to make sure we are using the business version of Microsoft Copilot, which comes with all those safeguards and is obviously linked to our work account. I've put the pictures up there so you can hopefully quickly spot which version your colleagues are using. And then if they have accidentally downloaded the consumer version, just get them to remove it and get this one, and make sure they are logging in with their work email address. That alone is a kind of really important takeaway. So if you are doing this as an organization and maybe at your next kind of team meeting or staff meeting, maybe just take the time just to show this chart and just make sure everyone's on the right one. Some key controls around data privacy and security that help mitigate those risks, so help keep you and your charity safer, is approve a set of AI tools. So today we're focused on M365 Copilot Chat, and I know we had some people who are able to use any tool. Think about, if you're able to use any tool, what checks and balances people are putting in place and what they're putting into those tools. So generally it is safer to have a list of what you can use and what you're allowed to put into it. And that takes me to my next point on the what you're allowed to put into it. So as organizations, we all have different types of data or information that we may want to work with AI. So everything from material that's already out there on the internet through to obviously very sensitive data around our colleagues or our clients or our service users. So something we need to think about within our data privacy as controls is having some guidelines about what data can be inputted into Copilot Chat. So some organizations have a traffic light system, so green, amber, red. Green, fine to use this data. Amber, check first. Red, only with express permission of X, Y, Z. So this might be, for example, that you want to do of a volunteering survey. AI could do, Copilot can help you with this. It could look at the different kind of written answers and find some trends for you. So again, what you might want to have in that data protection policy is that's fine, but all personal data identifiers needs to be removed before you do that analysis. And just because using Copilot on any AI tool changes kind of how that information is processed, just make sure your data protection measures are up to date, check that privacy policy on the website, and just check internal policies. As I say, whoever leads on your data protection is a really important person to involve in this conversation. The other set of risks we're just going to briefly look at are the reputational risks. And here are a couple of stories that have hit the headlines in the last probably 6 months. Very recently, it's a couple of weeks ago, we had the story about the New York Times drops a freelance journalist who used AI to write book reviews. And what actually happened here is readers of the New York Times were reading his book review and found that it was very similar to one that had appeared in The Guardian. And it came out that he'd used AI to help draft it and research it, and obviously they'd used that as source material. Now, there was nothing wrong with him using AI to do some research or even to help him edit it. Obviously, we must always check the source of the information and check that it's written in our own words and reflects our own opinions. That's really important when we use AI, that we are always making sure it reflects us and our charity and not what it's found online or the general knowledge or information it's trained with. Other example has actually happened a couple of times. We've seen it from these big consultancy firms. So this one is Deloitte over in Australia had done a report for the government, and there were links in that report to studies that did not exist. And these are things basically that they'd used AI to research, and the AI had made it up. And that's a really important thing for people to be aware of, that this is a risk and that we always must check sources. And as we can see, either of these cases, if they happened within a charity, would be embarrassing and damage our reputation. So if we sent a report making a case for funding, a funding bid, or a report back to our funder with a link, something didn't exist, or we published a blog on our website, or we included something in our newsletter, or equally that it too closely related the source to the source data in this reputational answer. And these are some of the big risks to be aware of. First one is hallucination. So what is an AI hallucination? Basically, it gives you a confident but incorrect answer. And it can even do this when it gives you a source for that information. So I was doing some work for a client the other day, and we were doing some work around AI and sustainability. And I was comparing the energy and water use for a prompt with other things. So we had some kind of context for it. It gave me the figures for a bar of chocolate. And when I went to check those figures against the article it gave me, they were out by a factor of 100. So again, if I hadn't made that check, it would have put information out there that would have been professionally damaging to my reputation. And so we need to be very aware of this, and we need to make sure that our colleagues are aware of this, so that we are always checking information and the source of it. And this one is more subtle. Now, I hope looking at these pictures, they're all AI generated. That's not the answer to this question, that you can see that there are some issues with them from a bias perspective. In fact, there are an awful lot of issues with them from a bias perspective. Simplest, I'm sure we're all aware, not all engineers are men and not all nurses are women, but it even goes beyond that. You know, there's no diversity up there at all. In fact, according to this, every nurse is in her early 20s with long brown hair and big brown eyes. And now, last time I went into a hospital, it certainly didn't look like that. And this is an example of bias within our AI tools. Now, I use pictures to show you because it's much easier to show you with pictures than with words. In the early days of tools like Copilot or ChatGPT, you actually could get them to give you quite a good answer that showed bias in action. So if you asked them, what does a typical director look like? They would answer a man. Whereas as the models have got more sophisticated, the bias has got more subtle. And there's lots of different types of bias we need to be aware of. There's things like this, where it reinforces stereotypes. It also, because it's trained off data onto the internet, it largely reflects kind of Western ways of thinking, because that makes up the majority of the data. It also agrees with you too much. I don't know if you've all had it. I get it a lot. Some days I need it. It tells me I've done a brilliant job, and it is, you know, the best answer it's ever seen. Well, that's actually not helpful unless you're having a bad day. What you're wanting it to do is to critique your work or help you improve it, not just agree with you. So we need to be very aware that there are lots of different types of bias embedded within AI, and we need to mitigate those in any of our work. Key controls. So when we're thinking about these reputational risks, we have two distinct key controls. The first is clear guidelines for your team. So you can have an AI policy, they're becoming very common, or you can have a kind of acceptable AI use guidelines that complement other policies, because AI is very cross-cutting in terms of different areas. But key things in those guidelines are things like you are accountable for what AI produces. You must always edit it, you must always review it, and you must always make sure it really does reflect your viewpoint and the charity's viewpoint. And complementing that is the thing with policies is they often, unfortunately, get written and then stay on the system. Is what we actually need to do is train people about the strengths, limitations, and safe use tools. And like with Copilot, you know, we've just shown you how data's used. We've talked a little bit about the limitations. So from that, we can help colleagues understand what safe use looks like and also help them get the best out of the tools. But it's going to be increasingly important as time goes on that we really are aware of the risks and limitations around using AI tools like Copilot, and we put something in place that addresses that. And then we also need to consider the kind of ethical aspects of AI. And these actually closely interrelate with addressing some of those risks. What I've popped on screen for you is the 5 pillars of AI ethics. Now, there are lots of different versions of this. Each AI organizations, so IBM, Microsoft, etc., have their own version. There's also the EU AI Act, which has similar principles enshrined within it. So 5 areas to consider. Well, in terms of data protection and privacy and safety and security, we've talked briefly about those. Other things within safety security, which hopefully are already covered within your kind of IT policy or your data policies, is making sure you have long passwords and things like multi-factor authentication in place. Whenever I'm out training and logging on to all my various accounts, I'm always there with my phone typing in all those little numbers which confirm it is me. We've talked again about privacy and data protection. GDPR applies to AI. There are no separate rules currently. The ICO has been hiring a lot of AI people, so I'm guessing some separate rules are coming. But it's really important if we do have personal data that we make sure that we know where that's going and only use it if our data protection lead is happy for that to happen. Now, the other 3 are really useful basis for AI use. The first and the big one is accountability. Ultimately, responsible and safe AI use means that the user needs to use AI as just a tool and always double check outputs and outcomes, review them, rewrite them, and make sure it mirrors their viewpoint, their writing style, and they've checked the information with it. That is the kind of foundational principle. You may hear terms like human in the loop. That's a similar thing. We talk a lot about AI as your assistant, not your replacement. It's a great assistant and it can help you speed up lots of tasks, but you are ultimately accountable and must brief it well and check its work. Transparency, oh, that's a typo. It should be explainability, not exploitability. So this is about understanding how AI tools work and being able to explain their conclusions. So we talked a little bit earlier, didn't we, about what an AI model is and how they're trained on vast data sets and how they then generate new content by having learned patterns from in those data sets. That's me explaining how AI like Copilot works. The reason we need to understand it is once we know that it's generating information based on patterns, we know that we need to check that it's accurate and that it might not be. And we also need to know that if we let it just generate information on those patterns, it's going to be pretty average. And it's going to be quite reflective of all the viewpoints out there, not of our viewpoint or of our charities' viewpoint. And then we've got fairness and bias. This was the pictures I showed you. In the charity sector, we will all be very aware of the importance of both fairness and addressing biases. And the challenges that AI tools can help to amplify our own biases and overly agree with us and increase the prevalence of these kind of stereotypical views. And it is subtle. So we do need to be very aware of it and make sure that we're reviewing our outputs, that they are fair and inclusive. And inclusive language is particularly key. There have been some issues that AI gets used quite a lot to write job adverts, and that what we're seeing is language that might appeal more to men than women, just because that is more prevalent in the data it was trained on. So again, unfortunately, women are less likely to apply for roles than the equivalent man, so that could increase that issue. And I'm only going to touch on this briefly, but using AI does have environmental implications. I have to say the impact at a per prompt level is tiny, but the impact at global level is massive. So again, depending on your charity's stance, this applies to Copilot as it does with everything else. It's just important to understand this and just be aware of it. There are two sides to this argument. If it means we work quicker or more productive, does that offset the additional energy and water use? So it's an area just to consider and look into. And ethics are a core part of your AI policy. Here are just 10 areas that you might want to consider if you haven't yet put your AI policy in place. We've got that purpose and philosophy, which links back to that why AI and that discussion we talked about thinking about why as a charity you want to use it. We've then got AI as a tool, not a replacement. That's just a different way of framing accountability. It's just that that's how we talk about it, but it links very much to that ethical pillar about accountability. We've then got transparency. So as well as the explainability aspect of that, of being able to know a little bit about how these tools work, it's also being transparent internally and externally where relevant about how your charity is using AI or not using AI. Increasingly, but this isn't common yet, we are seeing statements from organisations on their website about AI use. I imagine in the next 5 years or so, we'll go one of two ways. We'll either all have them or we'll all have just accepted that it's absolutely standard. Laying out your approach to fairness and bias is a key part of your AI policy and just how you're going to mitigate it. And again, with data and privacy, often this then links through to your data protection policy. I mentioned that training and support is a key mitigation or a key way of reducing risk. So again, do you require people within your charity, that might be volunteers, that might be trustees, that might be the team, to have training and support before they use AI? And that is one of the complexities of this in a charity environment, is you need to obviously consider volunteers, trustees, alongside paid employees and how that all works and whether one policy is going to apply to all. Then if you have approved tools, just setting those out. We're talking Copilot today and Copilot Chat, and it is a safe option kind of to start with. But again, just thinking about how they might be used. And then we've just got some process bits within there. So if people want to raise either using a new tool or a concern, if people are concerned about improper use, and then finally, AI changes quickly. So unfortunately, this is one of those policies you need to check in on regularly to make sure it is still fit for purpose. And here's just a very top level kind of look at what an AI governance framework looks like. 4 key elements. So that AI policy, picking up on the bits we talked about. Risk assessments. These, in this context, are particularly around use of personal data. I've put in brackets a DPIA. That is obviously a data protection impact assessment, but only that will depend what you're doing with it. So again, just one to check in with your data protection lead. Where you're working as Copilot Chat, it might just be traffic lighting what can and can't be used. But it's just making sure that you've documented that you have looked at it. By procurement, in this context, we mean which tool have you selected and what checks did you do on that tool before it's used? I've shown you some of the checks I would do in terms of where data is stored, if the data is used for training. So again, just making sure you've got that in place. And lastly, training. So making sure the people using the tool know about the risks and the limitations, but also know about how to use it productively. So our final section, once we've got our people involved, both our AI champions and our senior people, we've thought about the purpose for why we want to use AI. Then we've looked at those 2 key risks. As I say, that is not an exhaustive list, but a good starting point. And we've thought about what governance or what controls or what kind of advice we want to put in place. It's then good that we upskill, motivate, and support our humans. And If you want to move quickly, this is how good kind of uptake of AI works. So you've put in place tools, you've made it safe. So now we need to make sure we give everyone regular updates. We give them some practical training on how to use AI, as well as those risks and limitations. We bring together this small team of champions. Internal champions are a great option. You've probably done this before. You might have super users for your CRM or other software that you have. But these champions can then learn more and then disseminate that to other people, which again will really help speed up this process. And it is about ongoing communication. So when we talk about clear internal communications, regular updates, what's working, what people have learned, anything people need to be aware of or stop doing. And putting that all together, we'll start to get AI use and Copilot use more regularly in the organisation. And it's a little bit about taking a structured approach if that fits with your organizational style. So here's a kind of simple way to approach it. So share an AI statement to set expectations, reassure the team and invite questions or volunteers. There are concerns often from people about AI use, both actually about being worried about what it might mean for their job, but also they may ethically want to discuss aspects of it. So it's good that we do this early, we position it, and we have open conversations about it. Then it can work well to, rather than at that point get everyone using it, to work with this smaller team of champions to help develop the policy, understand what works for your organisation, understand what doesn't, test out your tools, see what Copilot can do. And here you want to involve your senior sponsor, HR, and if you have one, your data protection lead, and then get that rolling out. So share the policy, offer some initial training. And what people find with using Copilot or any of the AI tools is it gets a bit overwhelming because in some ways it can do so much. So you're much better to find a few things that it genuinely helps with and get everyone doing those first and then increasing those over time. Now, that won't be the same across that organisation. That will be different for different teams. And of course, trustees can be involved at every stage, depending on how your organisational governance works. But do keep them informed and do think about how policy applies to them, because when they're doing work as trustees and on behalf of your charity, this might be able to save them time, which is great, but just make sure that they're aware of those risks, limitations, and policy. In terms of training, there are 3 training options out there. And you can have a look at these and see what works for your charity, and particularly maybe if you're going to put in your AI policy that people are going to need training before they use it, you might be able to find the resources you need for that on one of these sites. I have to say these are not sites I know particularly well because we do our training ourselves, but the AI Skills Hub is the government site and it was designed to help upskill people, and there are a lot of resources on it. I had a quick look for some charity specific resources for the session today and came across Charity Excellence Learning, which had a whole series of free resources. So again, make sure you review them and check they fit what your charity needs. And then of course, Microsoft offer, I can say, more practical work. I thought particularly Charity Excellence might be helpful from some of that risks and the limitations side of things. So there are definitely free options out there. I know charity budgets are always tight. So again, when you look at your policy, maybe get some of those AI champions to test some of these out. And if you find one that you think covers the risks that are relevant to your charity, use that moving forward. And equally, there are organisations like mine which will help charities do this. This is really a question of how much time you have available internally and if it's easier to get someone external to come in and help you do this quicker. So we can help with things like AI policy and rollout, or practical training tailored to different teams that's really grounded in what charities do. and what will actually make a difference. And also, in this fast moving area, we can offer follow-up support. One thing I spend a lot of time doing for my different clients is keeping them up to date with the changes to Copilot and what that means for their organisation, both in terms of opportunities, how it might now actually do something better that they want to do, but also risks as well.